Bethany, thank you so much for joining us today. How you doing?
Feeling good. Thank you for having me on here.
It's our pleasure. Before we get into kind of what happened at Wodapalooza, I wanted to go back to last year, going into the CrossFit Games and coming out of the West Coast Classic, coming out of the semifinals with as well as you performed. Mm-hmm. What were your expectations for Madison?
It's hard because I didn't really want to put pressure on myself, right? I was feeling really good. And when I talked to Justin at the beginning of 2021, I was like, my goal is just to have a healthy year. I want to feel good going into the CrossFit Games and into any competition really, because in the past, I always get hurt before a competition and then I'm out for 4 or 2 weeks and I'm doing nothing before a competition and okay, well, we'll just see what happens. And so yeah, my goal into the CrossFit Games was to be healthy, and I was until I got there.
Oh man,
unfortunately.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of curious, because by all accounts it looked like you're in the best shape and peaking at the right time, and your competitive results pointed towards that with winning West Coast. What was different about this year? What were some of the things that maybe went right, or you were able to adjust accordingly to prevent the injuries and all those other little things?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different parts, and I honestly learned a lot post-COVID, but I think leading into the CrossFit Games this year and even West Coast, being able to train with Carrie, I'll always say this in every podcast that I had, it was just a special time that I got. And I'll always be grateful for that because she's such a great role model and a leader of just doing everything to the best of her ability. And I think there's something to be said to be able to train with someone that's at a, higher level than you, and iron sharpens iron at the end of the day. And so it was really cool, especially between West Coast and the CrossFit Games. We were vibing so well that every workout we were 1 to 2 to 3 seconds off of each other's times. It was crazy. It was so crazy, but it was such a cool experience. And I don't know if I'll get that ever again. I hope I will, but that whole experience was it was mind blowing to me. So I think that was a big thing. I think having a coach on site that's there the entire time and understands your needs was huge. And then I think also personal development too, and personal growth was huge on my part. And kind of going into post-COVID, that was a huge thing for me as well that we can get into later.
Yeah. How did missing out on your chance to compete at the games last year affect your motivation for this season?
It honestly didn't change a lot. I had a lot of peace for some reason with the whole thing. Obviously, I was really sad when I got that positive COVID test in the parking lot, and the stadium's literally in arm's reach of me. But I was so sick that I couldn't even think about competing. So the silver lining was that unfortunately that it was COVID, because I had the body aches and chills for 3 days straight. And so I was in the Airbnb, oh, I can't even move right now. So it was pretty bad for me. But after that, you could have had I could have had a chip on my shoulder, that's just not fair. And I can't believe this happened to me. But I think because of all the, the personal growth kind of going back to that I've had, I was able to have a lot of peace about it. And I really think, I know it's cliche to say, but everything happens for a reason. And I kind of look back at the competition, and there's a lot of people that got hurt, a lot of people. And it's kind of scary. There's a lot of people that got hurt. And then now, with the water issue that Morning Chalk Up put out, is there was so many different variables that maybe I was being saved from something more detriment to my body and my health, and this was the best of the worst, case scenario. So I just had a lot of peace about it. It's just hard to explain and talk about, but yeah, that's just how I felt. I was it's okay. It's okay. I'm going to get my time. I really, truly believe that. And I think being able to showcase myself at the West Coast Classic this past year like that gave me the confidence of like, I belong here. Like I can do this, you know? So I think it was a blessing in disguise to actually have a whole nother year before I get on stage next year to be able to hopefully showcase what I do have.
Yeah. It's such a mature approach, obviously, you know, and because like you said, you have to wait a whole nother year to get on at least the biggest stage.
Yeah.
And you bring up kind of an interesting point around like the nature of what keeps you out from competing, right? Like you were basically laid up in bed and there was no chance you were going to be able to, and you have fought through injury to compete. And I'm just curious what the difference in mindset is with like an injury versus an illness in that regard for you, because, you know, an injury, it's almost like you're running on 80%, you know, like you can still drive the car, but you're just not hitting fifth gear. Whereas like, you know, something like an illness that's almost out of your control, really, like it's not a byproduct of training or anything like that for the most part, that it completely sets you aside. And I'm curious how that mental processing differed from, say, like 2019, where we talked beforehand and you had a back injury and hadn't been able to touch a barbell and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the nail on the thing. So I think that the injuries were self-inflicted, and it was almost like a self-sabotage. And with sickness, that is completely out of your control, right? Like, I don't know who and where I got it from, and Carrie can probably say the same thing. Like, you just never know where that stuff comes from. But what I've kind of had a lot of epiphanies about, even post-COVID, is, and I talked about this on the morning chalk up interview as well, is I was doing all the right things, but even you can do too much of the right thing and it can be bad. And I think that's kind of what was happening with me is, and then like, where is your fuel source coming from? I think my fuel source was coming out of fear and control. And so I just never thought that I was good enough. And so I needed to do more reps of things. And so I think that kind of got me in a hole every year of, I was just abusing my body at the end of the day. That's what was happening. And so I think that's why I was inflicting, you know, pain on myself and injury on myself. And so that's why I think more peace could come from the sickness, because that's not something that I caused myself. But injury, I need to own up to it and say that, yeah, I caused that to myself. Like, I was doing more reps out of fear of not being good enough, fear of, I think a lot of women and even men too, fear of being fat, I think is a huge one for people, is like your body image. And I think that comes from, I mean, I know mine comes from gymnastics or athletics or even just how you grow up sometimes. But that was a huge one for me. It's like, okay, I don't want to get fat, so I need to do extra reps of something, or I feel like I'm going to let someone down or myself down or my coach down or whatever, and I need to do more reps here. So it's just self-inflicted. A lot of it was.
What was it that flipped the switch on the way that you viewed, you know, how you prepare and, you know, how you balance that with getting good rest?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different things. I think kind of going back again to the personal development, I think it's never ending, right? Like it's always a process. There's never like an ending point to personal development, and you just hone in and refine skills. And I think the more that you stay consistent with that, the more epiphanies you get on things that you personally need to work on. And so that was just a big thing that came to me. I think also having the right people in your corner is a huge thing to tell you the truth about things. And my fiance, Randy, definitely challenges me with that stuff. And so it's cool to have him in my corner to be able to bounce off ideas and thought processes, and just like refining those critical thinking skills that are really hard to do because you just want to go into straight autopilot sometimes. And you're like, no, I know what's best for me. And it's sometimes you don't know what's best for you, because obviously it's like I said, this is the hamster wheel of insanity, right? Like I'm expecting a different result at the CrossFit Games by doing the same exact thing every single year. Mm-hmm. So that was like another epiphany that came to me, is like, how do I expect something different to come about and like really get to my potential? Because I really feel like there's a lot of potential that I have, but I haven't been able to show it because I'm on this mindset of like, got to do more, got to do more, got to do more. And I think there is a time and a place for that. And there still is for me, but I have to be smart and have that thinking and the right process of knowing when to push, when to back off. And it's more than not going to be back off than push. And having those points. I think as your training age gets older too, like you can't push as much all the time that you want to. You just can't. And so I think in my younger years, when I was like 20, 21, you can get away with it a little bit more, and you need to develop those skills. And that's how you do it, is repetition, repetition, repetition. But I think kind of goes back to, I said, like the fuel source, like, are you using it because of fear and control, or is it actually going to benefit you to do this? So yeah, there's a lot in the brain that's trying to work.
Totally. But I think it's a testament to, I don't know, the mental fortitude, even if it comes out of fear, control, like just the durability of the mindset of the CrossFit athlete, I think, to be able to kind of push through that, even sometimes to the detriment of the physical self. We were talking a little bit beforehand, before we started recording, how, you took a nice week off after Wodapalooza. You're starting to adjust to training age. And I'm always interested, because we don't hear a ton about that. But as far as like, how does training age factor into your daily routine, as well as the feedback from Randy and, helping maybe put the brakes on a little bit? And what does that mean in terms of like recovery things and daily elements of recovery that you have worked into now as you're starting to shift gears a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, I've always been pretty good about recovery, but I think it's my mindset going into the gym. So like post-COVID, when I came back into the gym, I actually went through a series of 3 different injuries back to back to back. And that's what kind of led me to this epiphany of like, okay, something's got to change. I can't keep getting injured during the off season, because how am I supposed to develop myself, especially when a weakness of mine is strength? And so I think for me, I just have to have the mindset when I go into the gym, especially like coming off of a week of not doing anything or a competition, that I don't need to go into the gym and blast it, right? That's not smart, because that's how I got hurt after COVID. I ended up getting a high ankle sprain. I was out for 8 weeks with that, swollen all the way up into my knee, black and blue, bruises everywhere. It was awful. I ended up getting nerve pain and numbness in my fingers that I couldn't sleep for 6 weeks. And then my back went out on me. And I was like, okay, we're gonna stop and we're gonna reset. So that was all in like October, or from September to October. So I ended up just I was like, you know what, Justin, I'm gonna go take 2 weeks off. I'm gonna go and like reset the mind. And so I just was working on my mindset a lot. And so those epiphanies came to me of like, okay, I literally can't go into the gym every single day and just go balls to the wall. I just can't. So for me, and what we kind of put into practice is, I'm going to go 3 weeks on, 1 week off, and continue that cycle. I think that's the best approach for me. But during those 3 weeks, it's not go hard for those 3 weeks. It's rev up during the weeks. And so that 3rd week is where the intensity is the highest, and then you bring it back down, and then you restart that process. So I think that's going to be a better approach for me than just blasting and then getting injured for 8 weeks. And that's setting you back even farther than maybe just the tiny baby steps I'm taking during those 3 weeks of training. So we're going to put that to practice as much as possible this year. And I think it's going to be super successful for me.
What makes Justin Koller such a good coach for you?
I think just having him there present and being able to, I think for him, he sees me as like a person, not just another athlete. And that's why I think Carrie was so successful in the past couple of years, and why, all 3 of us, me, her, and Danielle, had a great successful year, at West Coast. Being able to go 1, 2, 3 was actually really, really cool. I don't think there's another training camp that's done that. So I don't think the spotlight has really been on that, of like how cool that actually was. But I think just building that personal relationship and being able to cater, the program to specific needs. But that comes with the athlete too, right? like, as I've gotten older, I realized my part, and maybe in my other coaches, where I wasn't communicating enough and like really sharing what my needs were. And just realizing that just because I can't do something that day, or I say, hey, I can't, like, this isn't going to work, I'm not letting him down. And he makes you feel like, okay, like that's fine. Like, you're not letting me down. And I think with my other coaches, I didn't really feel that safe with that. Or like, if I want to take a week off or like go see Randy in Los Angeles, he's like, go do it. Awesome. Like, he never makes you feel guilty about anything. And that makes you want to train harder, and like better and have quality with your stuff.
Yeah. You touched on elements of personality, I think, that are maybe a little bit more important than some people realize as well at the top of the sport. I mean, I got to see it a little bit a couple of years ago when we came out for the second open workout, me, Heber, and Marston, and we did it with the Underdogs crew as things were starting to take off a little bit. And just the general vibe from Justin, his wife, Ashley, his family, and how they kind of approach things. I think it's an important element that maybe young athletes don't necessarily factor in. And I'm curious if you think it's something you start to appreciate or seek out more as you progress in your career, because I think a lot of people just think, oh, I got to have a good programmer, someone who's give me the right X's and O's to get to the games, without factoring in the elements that you talked about, like feeling safe and feeling like you can provide that proper feedback. And is that something you see more with those athletes that are further along?
Yeah. I think that's a huge part, is feeling, like you said, safe with your coach. I think, like, looking back, even in gymnastics for me, I don't feel like there was ever a time where I felt very safe with them. If anything, their goal was to make us cry. Like, that was their goal when I was 7 years old, was we got to make everyone cry in the gym. And so, like, to have that is kind of scary, like going into CrossFit and like coaches and stuff, and just not feeling, like you said, the word safe is the biggest word, I guess, that kind of comes to my mind, is, but that also comes from, developing my side too, like I said, and being able to speak the truth, or speak like what exactly I need. And I think the more that you do that, the more you can decide if like that's the right coach for you. Because like maybe you don't get the right response. Like maybe you are doing your part, but that coach isn't responding the way that you need him to. So that's how you can kind of decide, okay, should I move forward with this coach, or, all right, I don't think this is a good mesh and it's not going to work for me. And so, yeah, I definitely feel that with Justin. It's kind of like a nice release off of your back. And he has to remind me sometimes, because I feel like I'm still developing that trust of like, can I really trust you? Because it's hard. Like, when you grow up a certain way and you have all these coaches that maybe don't make you feel that way, it's hard to develop that mindset and that skill. So I think just getting reminded too of that, like, you're not going to let me down. Like, whatever you do, whether you get first place or last place in a workout, I'm going to treat you the same. I'm still going to love you the same. And so, yeah, it's kind of cool. It's cool to have that, for sure. It's very important.
We talked to Justin shortly after he agreed to take Ricky Gerard under his wing. And he said he spoke to all of you about that decision. What can you share about that conversation and what you thought about that when he came to you?
So even just speaking on Ricky, I got to hang out with him a little bit. He was sick, so I was like, all right, we're not having another CrossFit Games debacle here at the Wodapalooza. But having him here the last couple of weeks leading up to Wodapalooza was actually really cool. Like, he's so kind, and I honestly didn't know a lot about Ricky kind of going into him being here, because I think CrossFit, and this is just my experience or other people's experiences, but they separate the men and the women pretty well and a lot. So like, I honestly don't know a lot of the men, except for like, a handful of them that I've done sponsorship stuff with them or whatever. But as far as like relationships and stuff, they keep it pretty separate, just because they have like all the women go and then all the men go, and then while we're competing, they're doing meetings, and it's just back and forth. Like, we just don't really cross paths that much. And so I didn't really know anything about Ricky. I know that we competed at the first CrossFit Games in 2017 in Madison together, but I'd never talk to him or anything. And he's really awesome. He's such a kind person and a kind heart. And I think it's really cool that Justin is giving him this second chance, because I look back on my life at 21, 22, and I'm like, man, if someone didn't give me a second chance on things, like, we make so many mistakes in life. Like some are bigger than others, right? And it's unfortunate that his had to be blasted everywhere, right? But we can't cast the first stone. Like, everyone's done so many bad things in their lives, and wish they could go back and just not do those things. So I think it's really cool that, it kind of goes with our name, like underdogs. We're the underdogs, and it's cool that he gets to be a part of it. And I hope that he comes down a little bit more and he's able to train with us. But I'm glad that Justin has given him this second chance at life, because he's already going to have it hard. Ricky's already going to have it hard.
Yeah.
Like, he's already going to have people like hating on him. It's probably going to be really hard for him to get sponsors. And so it's cool to have someone in your corner that's like, hey, like, come over here. Let's do this. Let's figure it out. So
yeah, it's interesting. We have a tendency to, I feel like as we get older, forget our own lived experience sometimes with those second chances and things like that. And do you think part of the, I guess, hearing your willingness to engage with Ricky and have him be under the Underdog banner, do you think that's a byproduct of that same type of, I don't know, courtesy or experience that Justin has extended to you? Because I feel like in many regards, like, hearing you say that's the Underdog brand, that's like, oh, okay, maybe that's a little bit of reciprocity that I think some of the community can maybe extend a little bit more of, not just with Ricky, but other areas as well.
Right. Yeah. I think that that's super important to have that in our space and in our community. And honestly, just in life, everyone just needs to be, more forgiving of each other and realize that no one's perfect. No one is going to be perfect, and we're all going to make mistakes, whether big, medium, or small, and so I think it's cool. Like, our Underdogs crew is just so welcoming, and we really don't have a bad seed in our group. And so I think that's just like a really special thing. And it's cool when other people come from wherever to come and train with us, because that's one thing that they always say to us is like, thank you for making me feel so welcomed. And so, yeah, I mean, that's how you change the culture, right? That's how you start changing things. And to speak on that too, that's a big thing, I think, in CrossFit. I think on the women's side that kind of needs to change too, is my goal inside of the other goals that I do have. Like, I want to be on the podium. That's a great goal of mine to have. I think everyone can say that goes to the CrossFit Games. But a bigger goal of mine and a motivation behind everything is I want to change the culture in CrossFit with the women. I think that I had, like, in 2017, there was a lot of great women that were kind to me, but I think a lot of women can say that there's also a lot of like icing and like kind of cattiness. But I think that's just in general with women. I think that we see each other as a threat, and we compare and we're jealous, instead of lifting each other up and just celebrating each other and empowering each other and like being happy when someone else wins. I think that that's just, it's crazy to say that that's not happening really in CrossFit. And so, like, that's a big goal for me, to plant the seeds, because we have a whole nother generation coming up right now. We have a lot of the older women that started CrossFit, kind of leaving, retiring, having babies. And we have this whole nother younger generation coming up right now. And so, do we want to continue that cycle, or we have a responsibility to be kind to those younger athletes, so that generation and that cycle starts changing and the culture starts changing? And so that's a big thing for me that, I want to see change a little bit more, is just a little bit more celebration for each other and just being happy for each other at the end of the day.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think CrossFit as a sport, unlike many others, has an underlying foundation of a community and health movement beneath it that I think should also help guide how even athletes at the top of the sport should treat one another, because ultimately you do have to go back to the gyms your gyms and the people that, you train with, and that you're going to try and, perpetuate this health long after your career is done. I'm curious, you mentioned a couple of the athletes that were maybe nice to you. Are there any athletes right now, either in the last couple of years or currently at the games on the women's side, that you think, if a young athlete is listening to right now, they can also maybe emulate or look to as someone that has maybe actually set the standard in the right direction as far as being a representative on that side?
Yeah. Well, I'm biased, but of course, Carrie, she's always been, I mean, whoever hasn't met Carrie, it's crazy. Just the kindness that she exuberates to everybody, and like just the presence that she has. And I think last year she was just such a great role model to all of us, and just really set the tone and the standard in the gym to be able to carry that on into this year. And so it was just, I knew she was like a really, really kind person, but being able to work out with her and be with her every single day, I was like, wow, it was crazy. Like, she is so kind and just so positive. And I just loved everything about her. So yeah, I would definitely say she's number one on the list. And I hope that she comes back. I don't know if her retirement is forever, but I think that she's just such a great role model that, you never know. I'm like, please come back. You're just so amazing. And she's so fit too. It's like, she takes a week off and then comes in once a week and then literally annihilates everybody in a workout. And I'm like, it's just amazing. But yeah, I would say she's definitely number one.
Carrie Pierce, I think, is one of those people that if you ever meet someone who says that he or she does not like Carrie Pierce, you should run from that person. There's clearly something seriously wrong. And she's,
oh my gosh.
She's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's turn our attention now to this year and this season. And you had your first taste of competition since the West Coast Classic, correct? At Wodapalooza. It's the first time we've seen you back out there. What were your goals when you stepped on the floor for the first time in that long of a duration?
Yeah. Like a big thing. Well, before I had all my injuries, so like right after COVID and I got back into the gym, I was like, I really wanted to do Rogue because it was in my hometown. Didn't get to do the CrossFit Games. And I feel like the Rogue competition was super, super cool. But Justin and I sat down and was like, it just wasn't enough time to get ready. And I wanted to go into a competition with the mindset of winning or doing really well, and not just going to a competition to go to a competition. And then unfortunately, with all the injuries that occurred back to back, it kind of, set me back a little bit. And I just didn't have the time that I needed to really develop. I really didn't feel like I had my fifth wheel or my gear. The engine just wasn't there like I wanted it to be. I was hurting out there because people were like, why are you walking between things? And I'm like, guys, I can't right now. I really can't. I don't got it in me. I'm sorry. So after all of that, and I basically had 8 weeks to get ready, and I knew I was going to do like the 3 weeks on, 1 week off. So all that to say, I only had about 2 weeks that were hard. I was like, well, let's just see what happens. It's about dusting the rust off a little bit, and that was kind of like the goal too, is like dust the rust off a little bit. Didn't get to do the CrossFit Games. So I want to do a 4-day competition before the season starts, see how it feels. And you always learn a lot when you do a competition, and you always forget like, oh yeah, like what I need to do in training is literally run between, different exercises, because that comes up in a competition, just like little things like that, that you forget about sometimes. But yeah, kind of going into it, I was like, well, we'll just see what happens. I definitely don't feel 100%, and that's okay. I'd rather feel 100% at the CrossFit Games anyways than, in January. But yeah, I think overall though, it went really well. I felt like for the first time I was recovering really, really well between events, which is like a huge sign of, okay, I'm doing right by my body. Like I'm on the right path. I'm on the right path. And I was sleeping really well and everything felt good. The cardio, I was like, whew, man, that hurts. That hurts. I forgot how much that hurts. But that'll come with more, more time under my belt, which I'm not worried about.
I mean, cardio wise, you finished second on, Echo on Fran, you're fourth on the roast and run. You win the final event, which has got, a whole bunch of devil's press.
Yeah.
I'm curious though, what, as far as like workouts and performance on the floor, what were your primary feedback points in terms of something you pulled away from workouts and that kind of you're going to center on moving forward?
Yeah. I mean, I made a couple like mental mistakes. And so that's always a tough one, because I always say with everybody, because, you're going to get really good judges and then judges that are really stickler about, movement standards and stuff. And so I think at the end of the weekend, it always evens out. Like, it's still going to be the fittest at the top, like it's going to even out. And so the one workout with the burpee box jump overs, everyone had their own issues with it, and standards were changed in the middle of the workout, and it's fine. You just go with the flow. Luckily for me, I never count my reps. So I'm like, oh, you want me to keep going? All right, let's keep going, just whatever. You just got to go with the flow. You can't let that stuff frustrate you. And if they change a standard, it is what it is. Like if they want the front rack here compared to on your shoulders, all right, well, how about you just train like that so you're always ready? I should know better. In 2019, we did the thrusters with the kettlebells, and they had us have them like out in front, and so I should know better. I should always train like that. I shouldn't train with, the kettlebells on my shoulders. Always train harder, right?
Yeah.
And so I wasn't really frustrated about that. I was actually like, well, I mean, people fell, so at least I didn't fall, And then on the sandbag one too, it was kind of like hard to see because like, with the videos and stuff, but I dropped the sandbag just a hair too quickly, and my foot was still on the line. And, with a workout like that, it's over if anything like that happens, anything. And I felt like that could have happened to anybody. And I just had the head judge right in front of me. So it was just kind of like, okay, well, but I'm glad that I was able to kind of like reset and not let the what ifs happen with that workout and frustrate me going into the last workout, and just, do what I could. But there's just like some minor mistakes, but I was like, well, Randy actually said this to me. He was like, well, at least we know it's not a fitness thing. I was like, yeah, you're right. You're right. It's not a fitness thing, just a mental thing. Because that was kind of like a worry for me kind of going into it. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be fit enough. And then after that first workout too, I was like, what am I doing here? Oh my gosh, but I'm just a slap in the face. Oh my gosh, that workout was terrible. That was such a hard workout. It was awful. That was literally top 5 like worst workouts.
Really?
I don't know if it was the heat or just like not having the time to get ready for that workout, but it was just like a combination of everything. And I like got off and I was like having an anxiety attack and I couldn't breathe. And I was like, oh my gosh. It took me like an hour to recover after it. I was like, what am I doing here? Gosh. But luckily everyone was feeling the same way. So I didn't feel as bad when I talked to everybody. But yeah, so at least with the sandbag thing, I was like, it would have been a really great workout for me. And I loved everything about it. And it was super fun. And I still had a lot of fun. Wish I could have done the second round, but at least we know it wasn't a fitness thing. So that's a great thing.
You started this conversation by talking about how you're being smarter with your training. You're trying not to overdo things. I know how competitive CrossFit athletes are. When you get now into the season and maybe you feel like you're not where you need to be, or that how do you avoid falling back into that pattern of behavior? Because you think that's what you need to do and stick with the plan. Yeah.
It's going to be a challenge this year. I think this is the first year where I'm really going to put it into effect for a full season. And so, it's just going to be hard. I think I knew there's a workout at Wodapalooza with the handstand push-ups. And I know I have the capacity to do it because that was shown at Wodapalooza. And I think like having the confidence of West Coast last year and how I felt and how everything felt, I know I got it in me. So, but I knew going into Wodapalooza, I just wasn't doing enough handstand push-ups because of my nerve and numbness pain. So I was like, well, if handstand push-ups come up, I'm just going to do what I can, And so I think just having the confidence of knowing that I do have the capabilities of things, and not feeling less than just because in that present moment, I can't do it, because I know I can. And that was shown at, West Coast last year. So I'm just going to have to remind myself of that. Even this week, coming back into training, I want to go in, and those workouts this week that, Justin puts in, they look so much fun. And I'm just like, I just want to do it all. But I'm like, no, like if I want to be healthy and like feel really good at the CrossFit Games this year and do well, like doing 2 rounds compared to 3 rounds isn't going to kill me. Like maybe if I do 3 rounds, probably won't be the best for me. And I'll probably, fill that later on next week or whatever. So it's just being smart with that stuff and just knowing that there's confidence in there of the ability of doing that. So, but it's going to be a challenge, definitely going to be a challenge for sure.
Yeah. Just hearing you talk about like that confidence and being able to, still what's going to be most important to you, I think speaks to some of the journey, which plays into the last question that I have. You showed up, for the first time at the games in 2017. I actually remember interviewing you for a studio segment right before, I believe it was right before regionals, because you had a strong performance in the open and you were one of my athletes to watch. And I'm curious now, like reflecting back, this is going to be the 6th season since you first showed up at the games, and you look at the person and athlete that you were back then, and the person and athlete you are now. What really stands out to you as far as contrast?
Gosh, I was such a lost child back then. I think just the personal growth journey that I've gone on in the last 3 years has just been like the biggest difference, and confidence too. I think confidence in my ability. I think back then, I didn't know what I was doing. I barely knew what a snatch was back then. And so I was thankful in 2017 that there was no barbells at regionals, and somehow I got to the CrossFit Games. I was like, hell yeah. And then it rained barbells at that CrossFit Games. So I was like, okay, this is what happens. But yeah, I think just feeling like I belong, and not feeling less than. And I think that confidence and that my identity isn't in winning, right? I think that's the biggest thing. Like my self-worth, my self-confidence, my identity is not found in CrossFit. It's not found in CrossFit. Do I love CrossFit? And do I love the ability to be able to do it at a high level? Absolutely. And is it giving me a platform for so many other things? Yes. But is my identity found in it anymore? No. So that's why like I can go to Wodapalooza and, want to win, but if it doesn't happen, still feel the same as I did before, like have that peace. And it's like, I think it goes back to like people pleasing too, is I felt like back then there was a lot of people pleasing and like, I didn't want to let people down, and you can't do it for that. That's such bad fuel. And that's only going to take you so far. And it's like, it's gotten me this far. Bad fuel's gotten me this far, like, so it's great. But I think if I want to get to that next level, like it can't be about that. It can't be about anybody else. It can't be about finding my identity in this stuff. It's doing it because I enjoy doing it. And then having a deeper motivation behind why you're doing things too. And like I said, for me, it's the culture change. Like we need a culture shift and a change. And whether that comes from me planting the seeds or somebody else or all of us working together, like that's a huge motivator for me, staying in CrossFit and just wanting to do well. So yeah, I think that's the biggest change for me.
Final question I have for you, and I asked this to a lot of athletes as we entered the season, but the open is only a couple of weeks away. Long way to go before we get to Madison. But what are the things that you think you need to accomplish in the next 9 months in order for you to look back on 2022 and say, that was successful?
Yeah, I think just doing the same things that I'm doing right now. I think after Wodapalooza, I had a lot of confirmation that I'm doing the right things. It's just a matter of being patient, and patience is very hard. It's a very hard skill to develop. And a lot of people don't want to develop that skill, and they just want to get to the end and so I had a lot of confirmation through people sending me messages or just talking to the athletes at the competition, and just how my body felt and responded to things, that I'm doing the right things. I'm now doing the right things, and it's just continuing on that path, and whatever happens. And I think just being okay with that. And like I said, just not finding my self-worth through getting on the podium or not, like if it's meant to be, it's going to be, right. and the stars will align and it's going to work out. But I can have a lot of peace that I'm doing right by my body and I'm doing the things that I need to do, and I'm not self-sabotaging myself. I'm not making excuses for myself. And I think that's the biggest thing.
Cool. Well, Bethany, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. We really appreciate it. And, best of luck, and say hi to all the Underdogs crew for us. We look forward to checking in with you throughout the season.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me on here.